Now we've got the host of The Don Lemon Show and author of the new book, I Once Was Lost. Don, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Brian. I really appreciate it.
So we're going to dive into the book in just a moment, but first there is some breaking news that I wanted to cover with you. It feels like a Rubicon has been crossed with the Republicans right now. Mark Robinson saying that he's a black Nazi, J.D. Vance doubling down on his war on anyone who's not married, Trump going out and attacking Taylor Swift, the biggest star on the face of the earth. All of this betrays basic common sense about how to campaign, which is to say nothing of doing this within 6 weeks of the election. What do you think the thought process on the right is here?
I don't think there is a thought process. I mean, it says a lot about who they are. I mean, not to mention you've got the RFK Jr. and the affair thing, all right? So you've got a lot of men misbehaving badly, including the former president and the person who's running for vice president, talking about childless cat ladies. But listen, I can't really, they're responsible for their behavior, but I can't really blame them, right? Because they're being allowed to do what they're doing by members of the MAGA party, by MAGA members who are supporting them. And so I just think it's what the party has become. It's no longer your mom or your dad or your granddad or even the Republican Party of 2015 or even 2016. It's just we've gone off into crazy land through the looking glass.
Well, post-debate now, the polls are showing a roughly 4 to 5 point margin, national lead for Kamala Harris, including leads in most battleground states as well. Do you think that this is a temporary bump that we're seeing right now, or do you think that we're looking at some sustained momentum as we head toward November?
Well, here's the thing about it. She's such an unusual candidate, right? I mean, you cover this all the time. You know that she jumped into this. I mean, you can almost say at the last minute, right? Not so long ago. And then got the entire Democratic Party to coalesce around her, and then took the polls to a much better place than President Joe Biden had them. So I think that was her bump. I think she got a huge bump just entering the race, right? And then came the convention, and then people are starting to get to know her. And I think even from the town hall that she had recently with Oprah Winfrey, I think she's going to continue to gain momentum. And I believe that when people get to know her more and get to find out about her personally, when she can have real moments that I love, that she was concerned about in the Oprah town hall, that, oh, I shouldn't have said the thing about the gun. If you enter my house, you're going to get shot. I think that's great.
Well, so I want to throw to that clip right here.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
But
my staff will deal with that later.
Yeah.
So what I think is interesting about that is that the Trump campaign actually tweeted that out as if it's going to hurt her. But all that's doing, and this is what I can't really understand about what their strategy is here, is endearing her to those very Republicans and independents whose support she's trying to court in this election. And I think that their mentality about all of this is just so tribal that they think that when a candidate does anything that might upset their base, then it's automatic demerits for them because they can't wrap their head around the idea that she's actually looking to expand her coalition, that she already has the support of Democrats, but she's actually looking to grab the support of independents and Republicans. And so posting a clip where she goes and says something very natural for all of these demographic groups, which is if somebody comes into my house, I'm not afraid to use my gun, like that's going to have the opposite effect as they think it's going to have.
Yeah, it takes a talking point, if you want to say that, away from them, right? And the whole gun issue, because I love what she said at the debate. Stop lying. Both Tim Walz and I are gun owners. We're not trying to take anyone's guns. Right. And I think people want safety. That is relatable to everyone. And here's one thing that I have to say. When you're talking about the gun issue, that's usually a Republican thing, right? So she's not only taking that back, but she's taking this sort of patriotism thing back. She's taking like the flag back. And so I think this helps her absolutely more than it hurts her. And I think that the Republicans, the MAGA folks, don't know what to do. They can't find their footing. They're running a campaign that's from, a time gone by, not even from the 2000s anymore. It's more like a Willie Horton campaign, back from the 80s and 90s. It's just, it's terrible.
You had mentioned something that I thought was especially interesting, and that's the more that people hear from Kamala Harris, the more they like her. At the same time, the more people hear from Donald Trump, who has thus far benefited from being largely out of the spotlight for so many years. I mean, people have a very short attention span, a short memory in this country, and so not hearing from Trump every day, not having him on Twitter every day has actually redounded to his benefit. How does Donald Trump come back from that? Because as we get closer to November, it's inevitable that he's going to be on more TV screens. He's going to be doing more interviews. He's going to get more press. And so is Kamala Harris. And when the distinction for likability is so drastic, and every time we see Kamala Harris, her likability goes up. Whenever we see Donald Trump, his goes down. How does he come back from that as we head toward November?
Brian, I don't want to give him advice. I don't
not like he would,
advice.
Don, as if he would take it. He's not taking advice from his own campaign staff.
I'm joking with you, but someone asked me what would Donald Trump have to do in order to win the debate, and I said, well, let her talk, don't lie, which is very tough for him, and then not come off as an ass. Oh, I said you can beat tall that order if you want. Yeah, a tall order for him. So what would he have to do? Another tall order, and the same sort of advice. Stop lying, and basically, Brian, shut up.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. But he cannot help himself. He just can't do it.
To what extent does Kamala, being a black woman, a prosecutor, and someone who is clearly stronger than he is, especially as he beats his chest as a strong man, to what extent do you think that influences how he's running his campaign? Because it's not lost on any of us that all of those things are things that Trump himself is diametrically opposed to.
Well, how he's running his campaign and what his campaign advisors want him to do are, I'm sure, most days, two different things, right? They want him to stay on message. They want him to do that, but he just can't do it. How does that influence him? It infuriates him. It drives him crazy. He's getting beaten by a woman. Not only is he getting beaten by a woman, he's getting beaten by a black woman. So, and a smart woman and a strong woman, not just Hillary Clinton was all those things, but Hillary Clinton wasn't black, right? And so he really doesn't know how to react. Oh, well, you just became black and I didn't know when you did this and whatever. And then they start all of these racist tropes about people eating, dogs and cats and Haitian immigrants who are there legally, right? So he doesn't. They don't know how not to be racist. Right. And he doesn't know either. So that affects how he's running his campaign. And I think he's just spinning right now. He thinks the old things that he used to be able to do is get in front of a crowd and just be unhinged and spout up all these things that it works for him. It doesn't, as we saw in the debate. It did the exact opposite of what he thought. People thought he looked unhinged, and compared to her poise and intelligence and how her restraint, she pulled back and just said, okay, eating cats and dogs.
Which by the way, drives him even more nuts because
drives him crazy.
Because he doesn't know how to deal with the fact that when he tries to bait somebody or when he tries to get in the mud with somebody, for them to engage with him is what he wants. When they don't even humor his nonsense, it makes him look small and pathetic and insignificant and impotent, and he loses it after that.
Yeah, but the thing about her, you're right with everything you said, but the thing about her is that she's a prosecutor. She hasn't been in a courtroom in a while, but every time she stands on that stage, or every time she does a debate, if she does another one, she gets more confident. That prosecutor comes back being in a courtroom. How you can bait someone into giving you the answer or telling on themselves with a lie, right? So she can bait him, and then she pulls back and she just lets him,
hang himself, basically.
Dig his own ditch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be careful now with the language, right? Because they're all saying those things. So I want to be careful with those things, even though we know whose language is inciting, violence and if you believe that language is inciting violence in these times.
So with that said, I want to move over to the book. The book is called I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. Don, you talk about the Sandy Hook shooting in the book, and there was one part that was really striking to me. You talk about an image staying with you, and that image is of a small white coffin. And you discuss the size of it, and that's what really hit you. Even for somebody like me, when I'm covering stuff like this, I have to step away sometimes. I'm independent, so I've always had that luxury. When you were at CNN and covering this, you couldn't do that. So first of all, how do you retain some faith in humanity when your job is expressly not to look away from the worst that humanity has to offer?
That's a very good question, because that's part of the reason that I wrote this book, is a large part because I was having a crisis of faith about myriad things that were happening in society and in the world. I write about that little casket because that was one of the last things that I saw before I left Newtown. And I think in the book, I say something similar, that it was about the size of the nicest present under a Christmas tree, or something to that effect. Brian, I was doing a live shot, and they were saying, well, you may go home today. You may be clear. We don't know. We'll see what happens. I was doing a live shot. And as I'm doing the live shot, a hearse came by with a mom and dad in the back, the mom on one side leaning, the dad on the other side leaning. And as it came by, and then when I looked in the back, it was this tiny coffin. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get out of here. And I realized in that moment that I could leave, but those people couldn't. They'd have to live with it for the rest of their lives. And so, when you're covering those things, you're covering them on adrenaline. But then they do get to you, whether you're an independent journalist, whether you work for a large cable news organization or broadcast organization or a newspaper, you're human, and they do get to you. And so what I did, the release for me, was writing this book about the hypocrisy around guns and how guns have become a religion for people, and the hypocrisy around religion, how it's infecting our politics, and that line for separation of church and state hasn't not only been blurred, people are trying to erase that line, evangelicals with toxic teachings. That's why I wrote the book. This book is actually a release for me to be able to have a say about those things, about being human, and also having the privilege of being able to cover these stories and tell people the truth about what's going on.
Don, have you found it more difficult to compartmentalize what you're seeing, or less difficult?
I have, as I have gotten older and I have more experience. I've been doing this since the 1990s, Brian, since before you were born, right? I'm sure. But I think that I've gotten...
I'll take that. I'll take that compliment. I'm an 80s baby, but just barely.
Okay, well, listen, but I think that I think that less and less as you get older, I think my heart has become softer. I've become less ambitious about, yes, I want to go out and I want to cover that story. I want to do this. I want to get to this level and this level and this level. And now it's become more about the humanity of it for me, because I've achieved all those things. Yeah. And so now my heart is open and my heart is bigger, and my focus is somewhere else. And what I want to achieve from this is not success from the business, but making sure that I am able to inform people and to do it through a humane, loving way where I can reach people's hearts as well as their minds.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit in what you're saying, I'm in complete agreement. I think in terms of being able to compartmentalize, I've actually found it more difficult to be able to do that. In the beginning of the Trump administration, I used to be able to see the depravity. There was no floor. But I was better able to allow it to bounce off me. But it's kind of chipped away to the point where it is easier to kind of impact me, to have an impact on me than it used to be. I used to be able to bounce back pretty easily and very easily compartmentalize and say okay,
we're saying the same thing.
Yeah,
Brian. We're saying the same thing. I used to the same thing. It was just and then because I would go from one story to the next, right? But now it's really tough, and especially you were so right when it comes to the Trump administration. It was so tough, so many lies, so much misinformation, so much inhumanity. Yeah. In not just in Donald Trump, but look at other people around him who are in jail and their morals and values. So yes, I agree with you, and I'm glad that that you're actually someone who's covering this, and you have a massive following and a huge influence, and that you do have a heart. I think that's commendable.
Yeah, look, I think it's a relatively new phenomenon, if I can say so. I'm new in the space, relatively speaking, but I do think it's a new phenomenon here, because covering the Clinton administration, covering George H.W. Bush, it's not going to have the worst day in those administrations is still not going to be as overtly and purposefully depraved as the Trump administration was. A lot of what they did was was expressly to show people that they were punitive, or they would do things to have a deterrent effect. They would do the most depraved things they could to immigrants to show that they were having a deterrent effect to block other immigrants. So inherently, those had to be the most base actions they could conjure up. And so I think that this is all new for at least for reporters out there who are empaths, because this isn't really something that people had to encounter in previous administrations covering politics.
In this administration, the cruelty is the intention. In other administrations, sometimes the cruelty is the byproduct.
Exactly.
Yeah, when they say, it's not, I hate to say that cliche, it's not a bug, it's a feature, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it is the intention for them to be cruel.
You had a quote that I think is very in line with what we're talking about right now, and that is there's a terrible dichotomy in covering stories like this one. The story you wish you had never happened is the same story you beg to be sent out on, because history requires a witness, and that's what journalists sign up for.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that?
Well, it's kind of it's what we sign up for, but that doesn't make it any easier. Right. And so in that moment, when you ask, how do you compartmentalize? I also write in the book about covering Uvalde and having the preacher, being there live and having a pastor come on and say, we have joy in this moment because we know we're going to see them again. And
you challenged them.
Without disrespect, I had to call bullshit on that, because I couldn't see how any family could be joyous in that moment. But I realized in that moment I had to challenge him on that, because people were watching, families were watching, they were hurting, and they were not finding joy in any situation. And I felt like I was grateful that a journalist could be able to stand there in front of an international audience and challenge him and actually have him change his mind, and actually get, I think, with a message that helped to penetrate rather than bounce off, as I think the other message was. So I think you have to look for the positives, the pros in those moments.
That was one of the most powerful parts of the book. You grew up with religion. You grew up in Louisiana. You grew up with religion. Clearly, it's had an impact on you, notwithstanding how religious or not religious you are right now. But what is it like then to see a whole political party on the right behave in a way that is so aggressively antithetical to that religion, like all the while hiding behind it as if that's what Christianity calls for, taking food stamps away from people, blocking Medicare and Medicaid to ensure that the elderly and young people and low-income folks are taken care of, vilifying refugees, like in the name of a refugee?
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the impetus for the book. Is because of that. I mean, I grew up during the time of the moral majority. Remember that? And when is it the Heritage Foundation or whatever? When all of that started during Reagan, and the sort of religious right started to take hold and have a bigger influence in politics. And then I was at CNN during the Tea Party, and I saw that sort of thing start to infect our politics, and now with MAGA. So that was really what compelled me to start writing this book, because I think I'm a person of faith, but I don't believe in theology. And the reason I wrote this book is because of my love of country, my love of God, and I wanted to tell people what influenced my life and shape me and help to shape the person that I am today, and help to sort of helped to be a bulwark from all the toxic teachings, evangelical teachings that sought to marginalize me. And so that's the reason I wrote the book, because I think that we are moving very quickly, and it's frightening, towards a theocracy. And that theocracy is pushing us further away from democracy, and also further away from God itself. So, that's why I wrote the book, is for the reason that you're asking that question. I was asking myself that question. I was having a crisis of faith in the moment, and I started to write this book.
Don, in the same way, and you had alluded to this before, in the same way that Democrats seem to be reclaiming the idea of patriotism, reclaiming the idea of freedom. I mean, you have Kamala Harris up there basically giving a permission structure for people on the left, or at least in the center, to know that that Democrats are not overtly hostile to the Second Amendment, even if we want obvious common sense solutions, gun safety solutions. Do you think that there's any chance that the left could reclaim religion if Republicans jump the shark too much. Like if their religion, at least as it relates to the political right, if their view of religion becomes so distorted, so extreme, and so antithetical to the religion itself, is there a way that the left has an opening to kind of reclaim that and actually be the party that can more effectively say, look, we actually do represent the real values of Christianity?
100%. And I think that could happen now. I think it's happening now, but I think it will be diminished if there is another Trump presidency. So I think Democrats are actually doing that. They're taking back religion. They've taken back, I think, patriotism, and they're taking back the flag. In the book, I write about exactly what you're asking me about. I say that as a Black American, I have a complicated relationship with the flag. And as a gay man, I have a complicated relationship with the Bible. And then I write and I speak about all of those things there. But I think when it comes to women's reproductive rights, I think that was sort of the nail. And that could be the thing that changes things for Democrats in taking back, or liberals, or just really people who have common sense, and taking back the whole aspect of religion and the Bible and scriptures and all of that from evangelicals and really white nationalists, because the two have merged, I believe.
Don, where can we buy the book?
You can buy the book. I always say, Brian, support your local bookstores, right? Because they are becoming few and far between. So if you can get it at your local bookstores, please do that. But you can also get it online, and you can buy it on Amazon, anywhere you get your books. That's where you can buy it.
It was such a good read and such a fast read. I implore people watching and listening right now, please grab a copy. You will not regret it. It's really spectacularly done. So Don, thank you so much, and best of luck as you continue to promote the book.
Hey, thank you very much. And the same goes with you. As you know, I loved your book as well. So congratulations on all your success, Brian, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm a huge fan.